Not many sitcoms dare to let uncomfortable lines ring out without rushing to apologize to the audience. All in the Family is one of the very few shows that did. From the moment it appeared, it did not try to explain why its characters thought differently, nor did it attempt to make those differences easier to accept. The show simply placed them side by side and allowed the tension to expose itself. What makes All in the Family different does not lie in the laughter, but in the fact that the laughter often comes too early or too late. There are moments when viewers laugh and then suddenly realize they have just reacted to something that should not have been treated so lightly. That misalignment of timing turns the show into an unsafe experience in the best sense of the word. It does not allow the viewer to hold on to the same moral position from beginning to end. Over time, the conversations in All in the Family have not lost their weight. They have only changed their targets. What once sparked controversy is now revisited through a different lens, but that does not make it harmless. The show does not need to be protected from time. On the contrary, time forces viewers to confront how they themselves have changed, or how they have never changed at all, when they hear those lines again. And at the center of this prolonged collision are the actors. People who brought very specific social positions onto the screen and then had to continue living with the way the public attached those positions to their real lives. Not everyone emerged from All in the Family with the same standing, and no one escaped entirely from the reactions the show provoked. This is not a story about a family on television, but about individuals who stood on the front line of a dialogue that America has never truly finished. Carroll O'Connor as Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker entered television not as a father to be loved, but as an unavoidable force of resistance. He said the things many people thought but did not dare to admit, and for that very reason, every appearance of Archie forced the audience to react. When All in the Family went on the air, Carroll O'Connor was already 46 years old, no longer a young face in television. He was formally trained at the University of Montana and in Dublin, and had spent many years drifting through minor roles before inhabiting the character that would define his entire career. Archie was not written to be a hero, nor to be a simple villain. He existed as a prolonged test for American society, where laughter often arrived hand in hand with discomfort. Success came quickly and violently. O'Connor won 4 Emmy Awards for his portrayal of Archie, becoming the most familiar face on American television in the 1970s. His salary soared, at one point ranking among the highest on television. Yet glory came with confinement. The public did not merely remember Archie, they fused Archie with O'Connor himself. The controversies surrounding the character spilled into real life, forcing him repeatedly to draw a line between the man and the role, an unrelenting pressure that lasted for years, quiet but persistent. After leaving All in the Family, O'Connor worked to escape that shadow through In the Heat of the Night, where he played Police Chief Bill Gillespie and once again proved the seriousness of his acting ability. His career regained stability, but his private life did not. In 1995, his son Hugh O'Connor died by suicide after a long struggle with addiction and depression. That shock tore through the most private part of O'Connor's life, pushing him to engage in mental health awareness efforts as a way of turning loss into action. In his final years, Carroll O'Connor lived more quietly, still respected as an icon, yet carrying a sorrow he never displayed. He died in 2001 at the age of 76 from cardiovascular complications. His estimated net worth was around $20 million USD. He created a character that made America argue for an entire decade, yet the most difficult conflict unfolded inside his own home, where there was no audience and no laughter. Jean Stapleton as Edith Bunker. Inside Archie Bunker's house, Edith was often the slowest to speak, the most frequently interrupted, and the easiest to be overlooked whenever arguments escalated. Audiences at the time grew used to the image of Edith standing slightly off to one side of the room, hands clasped together, calling out, "Archie," in a trembling voice whenever he was about to cross a line. A small reaction repeated so often that it became the character's identifying gesture. Jean Stapleton did not build Edith to win arguments with logic. She built this character to remain present, long enough and steadily enough, so that harsh words would not completely destroy the family bond. She joined All in the Family at the age of 48. Born in New York, with a background in theater and decades of work behind her, Stapleton had never been a representative face of popular culture before this role. Edith was not naivete. She was a form of intelligence that was consistently misunderstood. While Archie tightened the room with blunt declarations, Edith adjusted its breathing through patience and compassion. That performance earned Stapleton 3 Emmy Awards and 2 Golden Globes, an uncommon achievement for a character who did not dominate the stage with words, yet held the moral center of the entire show. That recognition arrived without noise, mirroring the way Edith herself existed throughout many seasons. When the role ended, Jean Stapleton deliberately avoided living permanently within Edith's image. She returned to the stage, accepted selective television roles, and appeared only when the characters were different enough to prevent her from becoming a copy of her past. Within the series' world, Edith also exited the story early. Stapleton appeared in only a few initial episodes of Archie Bunker's Place, after which the character was written out off-screen, leaving behind a void that made audiences realize that Edith's absence weighed more heavily than any voice that had ever filled that house. Jean Stapleton closed a private life in 2013 at the age of 90. Her estimated net worth at the time of her death was around $10 million USD, a modest figure compared to the cultural value left behind by the role of Edith Bunker, because when the woman once considered the weakest was no longer there, All in the Family continued, but the most fragile element of the show disappeared along with her. Rob Reiner as Michael Meathead Stevick. Michael Stevick appears in All in the Family as a living rebuttal, not through authority, but through youth and the certainty of belief. Every time Michael faces Archie, the room immediately splits in two. On one side, a value system accustomed to existing as it is. On the other, a generation that believes everything must be named and corrected immediately. Each time Archie hurls the nickname Meathead at him, Michael does not respond with anger, nor does he retreat. He stands still, looks straight ahead, and continues the argument as if the insult had never been spoken. Michael Stevick was entrusted to Rob Reiner when he was only 23 years old. The son of comedian Carroll Reiner, he stepped into the role of the intellectual son-in-law with just enough experience from theater and television. Michael was not written to win. He was written to confront, to represent the young people of the early 1970s who believed public confrontation was the only way society could move forward. For that reason, Michael functioned both as the engine of conflict and as a measure of how far America was willing to go with a new generation. The role quickly shaped how the public saw Rob Reiner, and in doing so, narrowed the kinds of roles he was expected to play afterward. After leaving the series, he had to break that image from behind the camera, a risky but decisive choice. From This Is Spinal Tap to Stand By Me, The Princess Bride. When Harry met Sally and Misery, Reiner proved the breadth of his storytelling ability, establishing himself as one of the most enduringly influential American directors of the late 20th century. In his later years, Rob Reiner continued to appear steadily in film and in socio-political life, but his pace slowed noticeably. He chose to spend more time at his home in Brentwood, staying away from the spotlight he once dominated. With no more loud confrontations in the style of Michael Stevick, Reiner entered old age with the composure of someone who had told most of his story. At 78, he seemed to have placed a period on public battles, believing that what remained of life should belong to privacy. On the night of December 14, 2025, that privacy was torn apart. Rob Reiner and his wife were found dead inside their own home, a space long regarded as a symbol of stability and discretion amid volatile Hollywood. Police confirmed it was a homicide, not an accident or a natural death. The news spread rapidly, shocking not only the film industry but also the public who had tied their youth to the humane films he directed. The investigation immediately turned toward his son, Nick Reiner, 32, who was arrested as the primary suspect. The fact that his son was placed at the center of the tragedy pushed the story far beyond the bounds of an ordinary criminal case. It turned Rob Reiner's death into a painful paradox. A man who built his entire career around dialogue, understanding, and intergenerational connection ended his life in an unresolved family tragedy. Specific details of the case remain sealed during the investigation, but that fact alone is enough to shatter the familiar image of a peaceful ending. Rob Reiner died at 78, not as an icon fully escorted by his legacy, but as a human being caught in the most brutal of private catastrophes. His death did not close with reconciliation. It left behind a cold void where the boundary between public life and personal tragedy completely dissolved. Sally Struthers as Gloria Stivich. American television in the early 1970s began to grow accustomed to placing very young faces on the front line of debates that even adults had not yet agreed on how to articulate. When laughter was tied to controversy, and each episode carried a position, growing up in front of the camera was no longer an advantage. It became a test that stretched across many years. Gloria Stivich appeared in All in the Family precisely at that intersection. Not to generate conflict, but to absorb its aftershocks. A role rarely named, yet one that quickly shaped how the public viewed both the character and the actress portraying her. At the age of 23, when many actors were still auditioning for supporting roles, Sally Struthers stood at the center of the most controversial sitcom on American television. Born in Portland, Oregon, Struthers entered All in the Family with limited experience, but Gloria soon became a representative image of a generation of young women who wanted to speak while being forced to endure having their voices spoken for. She did not dominate debates like Michael, nor did she regulate them like Edith. Gloria existed in a constant state of being pulled in opposite directions, and it was precisely this condition that made the character familiar to young audiences at the time. That familiarity brought Struthers 2 Emmy Awards, but it also quickly confined her image. When All in the Family ended, Gloria was too firmly embedded in public memory to disappear easily. Struthers continued working in television, theater, and voice acting, and devoted many years to humanitarian activities, accepting a path that was mentioned far less often than those of her male contemporaries. For decades, she had to confront harsh scrutiny of her appearance and aging, a form of pressure rarely acknowledged as part of the price paid for becoming famous too early. By 2025, Sally Struthers is 77 years old, still working at a selective pace, with an estimated net worth of around $810 million USD. Early fame once opened many doors, but it also required her to spend the rest of her life learning how to slow down. A lesson not everyone who enters the spotlight too early is given the chance to complete. Sherman Hemsley as George Jefferson. When All in the Family began expanding its world beyond the Bunker household, American television witnessed a clear symbolic shift. The story no longer revolved solely around the cramped space of the white working class. It suddenly veered in another direction. A black man who had become wealthy, loud, and unapologetic about taking up space. George Jefferson did not enter to reconcile conflicts. He entered to expose a more uncomfortable question. What happens when the American dream falls into the hands of those who had long been pushed to its margins? The role came to Sherman Hemsley when he was 37, later than most of his peers. Born in Philadelphia, having served in the U.S. Air Force and spent many years committed to theater before being noticed, Hemsley arrived on television with an energy that had been built up over time. George Jefferson spoke loudly, moved quickly, laughed big, and constantly demanded to be seen, a presence that was both comic and impossible to ignore. That explosive quality quickly propelled the character beyond a supporting role, clearing the way for the Jeffersons to become one of the most successful sitcoms in American television history. That success created a decisive fork in the road. While All in the Family continued to center on social debate, the Jeffersons placed George Jefferson at the forefront of popular culture, where laughter became intertwined with upward mobility, consumption, and unhidden self-confidence. Hemsley won an Emmy and became an icon of a new television era, but he was also locked into the very persona that lifted him up. After the series ended, he continued acting, voice work, and selective stage and television appearances, yet no role proved strong enough to replace the sharply defined shadow of George Jefferson. In the years that followed, Sherman Hemsley lived quietly, never married, stayed away from personal scandal, and gradually withdrew from the center of the spotlight. He died in 2012 at the age of 74, leaving behind an estimated net worth of around 50 million USD, a figure that reflects material success, but also hints at the solitude of the journey behind it. George Jefferson once walked out of the bunker house to conquer a new space. Sherman Hemsley, when the lights went out, chose to stand still, as if understanding that not every ascent comes with a way back. Isabel Sanford as Louise "Wheezy" Jefferson. In the noisy world that All in the Family opened up, there were characters who claimed space through their voices and others who existed by enduring that space day after day. When the story shifted to the Jeffersons, attention was often drawn entirely to the speed, ambition, and volume of George Jefferson. Yet beside that surge of energy, Louise Jefferson existed as a quiet counterforce, not to block it, but to keep everything from breaking apart. After decades in the profession through minor roles, supporting parts, and fleeting appearances on stage and television, Isabel Sanford joined All in the Family at the age of 54. Born in Harlem, New York, she entered the role of Louise with a life experience dense enough that it required no display. Wheezy did not speak much, did not fight for the center, but was always present in precisely the right place to show that George's rise was not a solitary journey. Audiences grew familiar with the way Louise paused for a long moment before responding, as if every answer had been carefully weighed so as not to pour more fuel on the fire. A repeated reflex, quiet, yet consistent. In 1981, she became the first Black actress to win the Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actress in a comedy series. The recognition came late, but it was strong enough to affirm that roles which do not dominate the stage can still shape television memory. As the Jefferson characters gradually separated from the world of All in the Family, Sanford continued acting at a measured pace, neither attempting to replicate the image of Louise nor chasing new trends. In her later years, she lived more quietly, carrying long-standing health issues with her. Isabel Sanford passed away in 2004 at the age of 86. Her estimated net worth was around 3 million USD, and from that moment on, the role Louise Jefferson left behind became clearer than ever. In a world where the loudest voices are remembered first, Louise Jefferson reminds us that there are those who keep everything from collapsing, and for that very reason, they are often the ones who leave most quietly. Danielle Brisebois as Stephanie Mills. By the mid-1970s, All in the Family was no longer a show searching for its voice. The arguments had taken on familiar shapes, the generations had been clearly named, and confrontation had become a nightly routine. It was precisely within this already defined world that Stephanie Mills appeared, not to change the order of things, but to exist at its margins, like someone arriving after every seat had already been taken. Stephanie Mills did not appear at a moment when the show needed a new source of conflict. She appeared when every conflict had already been named. Danielle Brisebois entered All in the Family with a role that offered no choice of position, only the option to stand still and adapt, while the world around her continued to operate by adult rules. After a brief period with All in the Family and Archie Bunker's place, Brisebois was not held in place by the image of a child actress. She turned toward music, first as a teenage singer, then gradually moving behind the stage. It was there that Brisebois found a position better suited to her own rhythm, co-writing, lyric writing, and building songs for others. From co-founding New Radicals to crafting hits for Natasha Bedingfield, Kelly Clarkson, and Kylie Minogue, her journey unfolded quietly but steadily, without needing to return to the house she had once passed through. In 2025, Danielle Brisebois, at the age of 56, continues to work as a musician and producer, appearing selectively and rarely placing herself at the center of the spotlight. Her estimated net worth is around 8 to 10 million USD. She entered All in the Family too young to truly belong to any generation, and left it with a lifelong lesson. Not every story needs to be told from the center of the frame. Mike Evans as Lionel Jefferson. Mike Evans was born in 1949 in New Jersey. When he appeared in All in the Family in 1971, he was 22 years old, young enough not to represent a set of values already hardened, yet mature enough to stand within confrontations that American television at the time was not accustomed to handling in a softened tone. Lionel Jefferson was given to Evans not as a character meant to generate waves, but as a necessary point of mediation, a place where two sides could touch without immediately exploding. Lionel Jefferson served a distinct function within the structure of All in the Family. He was the only character able to move naturally between two value systems without explanation or permission. The script did not place Lionel in the role of debater. Instead, it used him as a test, observing how each side would react when faced with someone who did not fully belong to either of them. The role did not bring Evans an immediate surge of fame, but it clearly defined his position within the television ecosystem, someone who understood structure rather than seized the platform. This became evident when Evans went on to co-create Good Times, a step that showed Lionel Jefferson was not merely a screen presence, but a reflection of how Evans viewed society itself. Communities do not need more shouting, but rather figures who can stand in the middle to keep the story from collapsing into extremism. After his years in television, Evans withdrew early from the center of the spotlight, choosing not to pursue a long-term star trajectory. He continued working behind the scenes, appeared selectively, and lived far more privately than many of his contemporaries. Mike Evans died in 2006 at the age of 57 from complications related to diabetes. His estimated net worth was around 1 to 2 million USD, largely derived from authorship rights and behind-the-camera work, fitting for a career that consistently chose the point of connection over the center stage. Evans existed to bridge gaps, and it is often those who stand in the middle who leave before anyone realizes they were the ones keeping the entire dialogue alive. Alan Melvin as Barney Hefner. Before All in the Family, Alan Melvin was already a familiar face on American television, appearing across a wide range of series from The Brady Bunch, The Odd Couple, and Gomer Pyle, USMC, to Sanford and Son. He joined All in the Family at the age of 48. At that stage of life, Melvin did not enter the show as someone needing introduction, nor as an actor seeking to build a new image. Barney Hefner was written as a face more recognizable than his name. A friend, neighbor, or co-worker the audience felt they had encountered many times before, even if they could not recall exactly when. Inside the Bunker house, Barney's presence neither created conflict nor drove debate. He appeared to fill the space, making that world feel more like lived reality than a carefully arranged stage. Unlike the more iconic figures of All in the Family, Barney Hefner existed as part of the background, and that was precisely the role Melvin had mastered over decades. He understood the rhythm of the sitcom, knew how to enter and exit at the right moment, and recognized that not every character needs to be sharply etched to be necessary. That very unremarkableness allowed Barney to hold his ground in a series where most roles competed intensely for conversational space. In the years that followed, Alan Melvin continued to appear steadily on television, most notably as Mel Sharples on Alice, a role he inhabited for many years, and through which he became a familiar part of late 20th century American sitcom life. There was no late career breakthrough nor a disappearance followed by a return. Melvin's career followed a stable trajectory, one in which continuity mattered more than isolated moments. Alan Melvin passed away in 2008 at the age of 84. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was around $3 to $4 million USD, fitting for a career that did not chase peaks but built value over time. Alan Melvin does not need to be remembered as a highlight because his entire career was built on a different choice, becoming the stable layer that allowed everything around him to function smoothly. And when people like that leave, television does not grow louder. It quietly loses a foundational layer that very few ever thought to name. Vincent Gardenia as Frank Lorenzo. Looking back decades later, Frank Lorenzo is often remembered as a supporting role that appeared just enough within the world of All in the Family. But when Vincent Gardenia entered the series at the age of 49 in 1971, it was neither an experiment nor a destination. It was a brief stop along a journey that had long been defined, largely outside of television. Born in 1922 in Philadelphia, Gardenia arrived in sitcoms with a deep theatrical foundation and a professional instinct refined enough to require no display. Frank Lorenzo therefore existed with restraint. He did not compete for the floor, did not pull focus, but simply added an everyday rhythm to the room. The kind of role television needs, yet rarely credits generously. That sense of being just enough also reflects Gardenia's true position in All in the Family. He was not placed as a spearhead of debate, but as the base layer that allowed the show's world to function smoothly. While the central characters carried the weight of social conflict, Frank Lorenzo passed through in brief moments, leaving behind familiarity rather than a name meant to be remembered. For Gardenia, this was a natural choice for an actor who understood structure deeply. Not every role needs to occupy the center to be essential. The irony lies in the fact that Gardenia's peak arrived elsewhere. Just 2 years later, he earned an Academy Award nomination for Bang the Drum Slowly, 1973, at age 51, followed by notable turns in Death Wish, 1974, and Heaven Can Wait, 1978, the latter bringing him a second Oscar nomination at 56. Earlier still, Broadway had awarded him a Tony Award in 1969, a decisive and early recognition that stood in contrast to his modest presence on television. Gardenia's success thus came later on the big screen, but arrived precisely where it belonged for an actor devoted fully to his craft. In his final years, Vincent Gardenia slowed his pace, working with the selectiveness of someone who knew exactly where he stood on the artistic map. No need for constant visibility to earn acknowledgement. He passed away in 1992 at the age of 70 from a heart attack, closing a career that was never loud, yet deeply respected within the profession. The value he left behind does not lie in the few $1 million mentioned at the end, but in a simpler truth. There are those who never stand in the spotlight, yet still shape the standards for everyone who steps into it afterward. James Cromwell as Jerome Cunningham. There are career paths that are not measured by sudden breakthroughs, but by the length of time spent waiting. Not waiting for a life-changing role, but waiting until one is solid enough not to be swallowed by opportunities that arrive too early. James Cromwell followed that kind of path. Before the public learned his name, he spent many years working steadily in theater, television, and mid-level film, accumulating craft, discipline, and a patience rarely rewarded in an industry that favors speed. Born in 1940, Cromwell appeared in All in the Family in 1973 at the age of 33. The role of Jerome Cunningham was only a brief slice within a series already accustomed to ideological clashes. Yet Cromwell's presence revealed a different type of actor. One who did not need to seize the platform to be noticed, only to stand in the right place to clarify the context. He did not enter the show as a face meant to be remembered, but as part of the current of debate, arriving, fulfilling the function, then stepping away, leaving no loud imprint but enough weight for viewers to sense the depth of time and experience behind him. When his role in All in the Family ended, James Cromwell continued along his long road, appearing persistently in film and television, gradually expanding the range of his roles. It was not until the 1990s, when he was already in his 50s, that he truly entered broad public recognition with Babe, followed by L.A. Confidential, The Green Mile, 6 Feet Under, and decades later, Succession. Cromwell's career did not feature a sudden leap. It resembled a slow but steady curve, where each stage was built upon the foundation of the one before it. At 85, James Cromwell continues to appear selectively in projects that suit him, regarded more as a veteran actor with deep professional gravity than as a name defined by accolades. His estimated net worth is around $810 million USD. Some people enter television to be remembered immediately. Cromwell chose differently, spending a lifetime proving that staying long enough can, in itself, be a way of arriving. Liz Torres as Theresa. Betancourt. American television has a tier of actors who do not need to be introduced through leading roles, nor require a breakout moment to be recognized. They appear consistently enough for audiences to believe that the world on screen continues to exist, even when the story is not centered on them. Liz Torres belongs to that tier, a presence built through time, not through climactic moments. Liz Torres was born in 1947 in New York. When she joined All in the Family in 1973, she was 25 years old, part of a younger generation of actors entering the show at a point when it had moved beyond its experimental phase and begun expanding its social scope. Theresa Betancourt was introduced not to create a new axis of debate, but to mark a subtle shift in how the series viewed the world beyond the Bunker household. No longer confined to familiar confrontations, but beginning to reflect a more diverse urban life, where communities existed alongside one another rather than constantly colliding. Liz Torres's portrayal of Theresa did not rely on climaxes or sharp exchanges. She allowed the character to exist through rhythm, through the natural ease of someone who seemed to belong in that space long before the camera took notice. It was precisely this lack of a need to prove anything that made Theresa a credible part of the All in the Family world, not as a role meant to be remembered in isolation, but as a lived fragment that made the overall story feel less like a staged debate. Liz Torres continued along a steady path in television and comedy theater. She appeared regularly across various programs, building a reputation as an actress with a high degree of reliability, someone who could enter any setting and make it function at the right tempo. By the early 2000s, she became more widely remembered by mainstream audiences through her role as Miss Patty on Gilmore Girls, where she once again played to her familiar strengths, never dominating the stage, yet making her absence immediately noticeable when she was not there. In the late 2000s, Liz Torres faced serious health issues related to her weight and underwent life-changing surgery, a quiet turning point, not tied to public image, but one that directly affected her later working rhythm. Since then, she has appeared more selectively, prioritizing endurance over intensity. At 77, Liz Torres is no longer working at a dense pace, but she remains recognized as a familiar face of American television across several decades. Her estimated net worth is around $5 million USD. Not everyone is remembered for standing at the center of the stage. Some are remembered for standing in the right place, long enough, so that the stage never feels empty. All in the Family ended with a final episode like any other television series. The frame faded out, the bunker house returned to silence, and the broadcast schedule moved on to the next program. But what the show set in motion did not stop at that moment. The arguments once dismissed as too much gradually slid into everyday life, becoming so familiar that they no longer required a laugh track to be accepted. Lines that once shocked now echo as part of ordinary language, sometimes rough, sometimes weary, but rarely questioned again. Looking back from today, what stands out most clearly is not who was right or wrong, but how dialogue itself has changed. All in the Family did not leave behind a victorious position. It left behind a pattern, people speaking within the same space, yet uncertain whether they are still listening or merely defending positions they have long grown used to. That pattern continues to live beyond the screen, stretching across generations, in conversations that never truly end and are increasingly short on patience. The fates of the cast mirror that condition exactly. No one left the show along the same path. Some carried their roles as marks that could never be removed. Some chose to step away to build different, quieter lives. Others were present just long enough to keep that world functioning smoothly. Then faded from public memory without noise. The spotlight did not leave them all at once, nor did it leave behind the same kind of emptiness when it went out. All in the Family ended on television, but what remained continued on in the ways people argue, avoid, and live alongside one another. And that is precisely why this show, though it closed long ago, has never truly become a story of the past. If All in the Family was ever part of your memory, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to keep accompanying stories about lights that have gone out but whose echoes remain, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.